Moscow has now hit back at America diplomatically. Top American leaders have been sanctioned by Russia. The list includes U.S. President Joe Biden himself, the Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, and other key members of Team Biden. Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, has been sanctioned as well. Even Hillary Clinton's name figures on that list. They are now banned from entry to Russia on the basis of reciprocity. However, Russia's foreign ministry said that the door remained open, especially for official contacts with the sanctioned officials. The foreign ministry added that this is the consequence of the extremely Russophobic policy pursued by the current American administration. Earlier, the West stepped up sanctions over Russia's invasion of Ukraine with measures directly targeting the Russian president and his ministers. Let's go straight across now to our correspondent, Susan Tehrani, who's with us on the broadcast from New York. Susan, the signal that Russia is sending out is clear that it is on the offensive, both through the sanctions and diplomatically speaking, and on the battlefield as well. Any reaction from the White House as of now on these sanctions that have been announced?
No, not a reaction from the White House yet. And we'll see how the White House and the United States, notably on the top echelon of the government, will respond. They'll probably play it down and say that these moves are symbolic and it shows the pettiness of the Russians for taking these kind of symbolic retaliatory measures, because obviously Russia doesn't have access to the financial assets of these individuals. However, it's important to note that just like how unilateral sanctions against Russia on the part of the United States really wouldn't have had an effect, if these sanctions are abided by other countries, for example, China at this point, which there is concern that, they might sort of form an axis with Russia, and we'll have to see if China decides to abide by some of these sanctions, then, that could cause some kind of problem for the United States and these individuals. So that'll be something interesting to see. And also other countries besides China, considering the fact that the timing of the imposition of these sanctions are interesting. They really do come at a time right after when Jake Sullivan really threatened China regarding helping Russia in any way or form in bypassing multilateral and U.S. sanctions as well. So on their own individually, I think the United States will come out and say that, they're not really going to have that kind of an effect. But from a geopolitical standpoint, we'll have to see in the long run what Russia has in mind and whether or not it's going to form some kind of alliance with these sanctions.
Let's also talk about how the sanctions already announced by the West overall against Russia, trying to punish Moscow for the invasion, will hit the West as well, are bound to backfire through the larger repercussions on the supply chains. What preparation has America made on that front so far?
Yeah, that's another thing. And just to go back, it sort of ties to that first question about the sanctions, because Moscow, there's word that has threatened to also punish those big corporations that have decided to pull out their businesses from Russia due to the sanctions imposed by the United States. A lot of those companies are U.S. companies on the one hand. On the other hand, the U.S. president has been very keen on blaming the inflation crisis and high gas prices on the Ukrainian war, and that is something that's not going very well, boding well with the American public. And there's a concern right now that the Biden administration really didn't have a plan B in, first of all, cutting Russia off from the domestic market here in the United States, and on the other hand, really pushing its green energy agenda, which, a lot of people say there's nothing wrong with that, but then going and not being able to subsidize fossil fuel at this point without having proper plans in place to open up the energy sector in the United States is really a cause for concern. And in the White House right now, even allies of the president are concerned that this is going to be a liability for him politically, but really for the American people. Gas prices right now are at an all-time high in American history. Inflation is due to go through the roof, double digits by the summer. And then, you an administration that on the one hand is trying to import oil and gas from outside of the United States, and then you have a lot of fossil fuel industry officials here saying that the answer is here in the United States. So yes, it's really hitting home, not only politically but for a lot of kitchen table items for the American people as well. And then of course it's the humanitarian situation in Ukraine, which is extremely dire and hard to watch as well on the foreign policy front.
Right. We're leaving it there for the moment. Susan, thanks very much for joining us with those inputs and details.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.